The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
Cowboys got a problem.
Dang.
The Cowboys have got a problem with the run defense. And ladies, it's a problem that we've known about for weeks. We've talked about it. We've even talked about the slate of runners that they're going to have to start dealing with. You've got Dalvin Cook this weekend for Minnesota. He's averaging 5 yards a carry, roughly 80 yards a game. After that, you got Saquon Barkley and the Giants here on Thanksgiving. Then you got Jonathan Taylor in the Indianapolis Colts. And then, Christmas, you got Jalen Hurts again and the Eagles. Mike McCarthy was asked about it today, and he seemed to think, Aisha, that their problem is the C gap. And for some of our listeners that aren't familiar with that, that is the area outside the offensive tackles. Mm-hmm. That's where they're sort of getting exposed and sealing the edge. And because I have access to a lot of former players and coaches, I was just as curious, I think, as a lot of Cowboy fans. Well, if you know what the problem is, why aren't you doing it? And in talking to a number of people, it sounds like they don't feel like when they're looking at the tape, there's enough bulk up front. And Brian Baldinger, who does a lot of great breakdowns, ladies particularly, if you want to get smarter with football, Brian will do that for you. It's called Baldy's Breakdowns. But he sent me a clip. It was right before the half. It was the Aaron Jones 12-yard touchdown run. What's concerning is you've got Micah Parsons one-on-one with the center. So he's right there in the middle of the field. He sheds the block fairly quickly, but at that point, Aaron Jones is already coming up the edge. And Aisha, we talked about this before the show started. It looked like Dante Fowler missed his assignment. In other words, he was supposed to twist back in to the open gap. He didn't, and then Aaron Jones was able to get the touchdown for the half, which really proved costly. What are you seeing? What stands out? Because it sounds like the locker room's pretty frustrated. We saw Micah Parsons. He wasn't name-checking teammates, but he certainly was calling out, if you're going to continue to do what you're going to do, then we're going to be dealing with this all year. What have you seen consistently on the tape?
That is just gentlemen not being where they're supposed to be in those plays. Like, even Baldy just posted earlier today, like, there was a play in the game where there were multiple gentlemen filling that one gap. And it was like, what are you doing? So I personally see on tape is that I think some of the alignment with the DNs is off as well. Like, they're lining up more inside, more inside than I think they should be, and it's allowing the tight ends to get their hands on them, and they're not able to get off of it. But more than anything, we talked about it yesterday, it's just playing your assignment. Mm-hmm. And it sounds so simple, but when you have so many guys who can get after the quarterback, have the ability to rush the passer, I think that right now these gentlemen are chasing the play and not making their play. And this is something that we have talked about on the show. And with this defense, the way that it flows, a lot of the time when the defensive line is getting upfield, or they're pushing or flowing the runner or whoever to another gentleman, and it's up to that guy to make the play. And if that guy doesn't make the play, then it's up to that guy. So it's a trickle-down effect. People are also running at your edges because they don't think your corners are going to come up and tackle. It's a number of things, but more importantly, I think it's just these guys playing their assignment, knowing their assignment. Like, maybe there's some conversations that need to be had of, like, do you know what you're supposed to be doing right here? Because it looks like you're trying to do what this gentleman is the other guy's doing. So more than anything, it's just them cleaning up, playing their assignment, and being disciplined and trusting their eyes right now. So
yeah, I just want to add some context to that. Neville Gallimore spoke to Patrick Walker this morning in the locker room, and it's crazy how you literally just said everyone's trying to make the play. He said, quote, "We've got a lot of great athletes and ball players, and everyone is trying to make the play. We've got so many dogs on the team, and if everybody just focuses on what they have to do in an individual assignments, we'll be good, and we'll get there for sure." And so I think it just, number one, speaks to how in tune you are with this team and what's going on with it.
Can we get a drop there?
But also, I just think it makes it challenging, I think, when you're so good at rushing the quarterback. And that, I've talked about that before on this show, just to a lot of people, when you can get to the quarterback, that signifies a good defense, right? Oh, like, they're taking down Aaron Rodgers, they're taking down Tom Brady. That's a good defense. But I think what you're learning at this point of the season is that you need a lot more than just sacks or rushing the quarterback in order to win. Mike McCarthy has told us every single time he speaks in that press conference that if I was other teams preparing against us, I would run the ball because I don't want to face our pass rush. And I think we're getting to the point where, number one, I wish you would stop saying that. But also, number two, now you have to start being able to back that up, right? Now you have to start saying, yeah, our pass rush is deadly, but now we're getting into the point where teams are recognizing that our run defense is a little bit lacking, so we have to go in and adjust that. I think that's really the focus this week. I think that's maybe along with limiting the reps they're getting before that Thursday game next week. I think part of the reason they're doing a walkthrough today is just to kind of get a little bit more in tune with what that really means.
And I'm glad you ended on that note, because I was about to say it's about going back to the basics. It's making it way too complicated within their own minds. They are overthinking. They're too busy trying to go for the play, make the play, instead of just sticking to your assignment. Go get your guy, and that's it. Because we've seen that this Dan Quinn defensive scheme works for these guys. It works for these players. It works within the depth in this locker room. It's just, at this point, the only thing getting in the Cowboys' defense is themselves. And really, it's been an issue, but what I think going into this game is going to show is the Vikings are wanting to expose the Cowboys defense even more than they feel like they did in Green Bay. So hearing on the other side what, the vibe was with the Vikings, it was very, well, just run the ball. Cowboys defense can't handle that. Run the ball. Very plain and simple. They are trying to expose that this is the actual weakness. This is the kryptonite for the Cowboys defense. So again, a lot of it looks like they're just playing too emotionally charged and not, more logically charged. So I think it's just going back to the basics, saying, hey, let's do some self-scouting. What worked, what didn't, stick to your guy. And that's about it. They just have to do it. They have to quit talking about it and do it at this point.
I love that. Well, I was just going to say, I love that you bring out, okay, they want to run the ball. You've got Dalvin Cook, right? We talked about Dalvin Cook. 5 yards per carry, averaging 80 yards a game. He can be deadly. You know who proved he's really deadly? Justin Jefferson.
Oof.
So
That matchup's going to be nasty.
And so the problem is if they decide, if this run defense suddenly decides to turn the corner, and let's say they drop a safety and they load the box, right? You're leaving Justin Jefferson exposed, and he's going to give up the big play. So I think the Cowboys this week, you've got to minimize the big plays.
Sorry, I had a poorly timed ding when you said that. It was like ding.
And I'm not Dan Quinn. I'm not going to sit here and say I know better than Dan Quinn. In fact, I'm actually just really curious about what the game plan is, because it's not just Jefferson. You got Adam Thielen. You've got T.J. Hawkinson, who you just saw with the Lions a couple weeks ago, who they picked up. So this is going to be a tough team. I think that the only way that they're going to be able to have success, particularly on the road. And look, they won that game in Minnesota that they weren't supposed to last year, right? You got to force Kirk Cousins to make mistakes. And the way you do that is the pass rush. Okay, so I think that they are going to get exposed again in the run, because I think the bigger threat for them this week is giving up those big explosive plays, letting them get out ahead, scoring on an opening drive, which they are very capable of doing. And so, again, what I'm looking for, as covering this team is, what's Dan Quinn going to do? Like, where is your attention to D? Because everyone's calling out your run D, but I don't think you can put more attention on the run this week, given some of the threats in your receiving game. Am I wrong on that?
I think that, like we were talking about, I think what's frustrating, and what was frustrating for me on film is, like, it is fixable, because if the guys play their assignments, they'll be at the right place. So that's the more frustrating thing about it. Also, too, this Vikings offense hasn't changed a whole bunch since last year, and the Cowboys played them considerably stout last year. And the Vikings also were keeping an eye on their right tackle, if I'm not mistaken. He is Christian Dursaw. He's in concussion protocol. He's a big part of what they do in the run game. So I think that this game is going to come down to what they are able to do in the run game, and then they're going to have to earn it. The Cowboys are in a place right now, again, where they're going to have to earn somebody being like, okay, we can't keep this guy in the box, or like we're going to have to drop someone in the box to help out, or whatever the case may be. They're going to have to earn teams adjusting to them being able to stop the run. And until then, teams are going to commit to it, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating on both sides, especially having to watch it. My bad, sorry.
On the other side of the break, we'll give an update on some of the injuries, but I do think what's going to help the run defense, specifically Micah Parsons, is if they get Anthony Barr back. And who wants to have a bigger game than Anthony Barr, is returning to Minnesota, obviously. But just having him there at linebacker, I think, allows Micah to play a little bit more freely. I think he's putting a lot of pressure on himself to make a lot of plays that maybe others aren't. And so, even as I discussed on NFL Network today, there's only so much that Micah can do. And I'm not sitting here saying he's teacher's pet, all these other guys are scrubs. I'm not saying that. But to your point, it's sort of a team effort. And I don't know about you guys, but in any work capacity, if I'm taking on multiple roles from multiple people, I can't be great at my job if I'm the jack of all trades, master
Say
of
that.
none.
Say that. Say that. That's a real thing. But I don't I know what else will help this defense. This offense not getting off to a slow start.
Yeah.
Because that's part of it as well, and that the defense also was put in not so advantageous situations last game as well. So
2 back-to-back turnovers.
Absolutely.
You think that wears them out a little bit?
I mean, yeah, and the slow starts. I mean, the offense didn't really get going until the second quarter.
Yeah.
So by then, your defense has been on the field a considerable amount of time. It's just this complimentary football was not present.
Not at all.
Because even on special teams, they was tearing you up too. So,
Yeah, I was just going to add as well. I know it's important to talk about the Green Bay loss and how the run defense was exposed in that game. But I think you also have to put into context what that game meant. That game, to me, was way bigger than exposing any problems that the Cowboys had. That game, from the day before they left for the bye week up until Sunday before kickoff, was all about Mike McCarthy's return. And I think even we did, as media members, that was our focus for a lot of the time. And so I feel like that is playing a factor in why we feel that the run defense is bad. And don't get me wrong, it was bad. It was bad. But I think it maybe feels worse because it was such an elevated and emotional game. And I think that's why it's frustrating for Mike. Even today, when Mike spoke today, I think you just feel that a little bit more. So I agree with what you're saying. And even to your point of being able to contain Kirk Cousins and the pass rush being successful again on Sunday, I think you kind of have to put that in perspective as well.
Yeah, and I think with that too, it's going back to what I said earlier. You're playing emotionally charged, and when you're too emotional as humans, you start to see a little bit of cloudiness, and it's a little blurry, and it's not so clear what the goal is. But going back to Aisha's point of offense, you win the pocket, you win the game. That's for both sides of the ball. That's for the Cowboys. That's for the Vikings. Whoever is going to put more pressure on the quarterback this week and who can do that, that's going to be huge. Not allowing a run to even be established for the Vikings, that's huge. And again, it's going back to not having a slow start, of course, for offense, but defense. Get a 3-and-out the first drive. First Vikings drive, get a 3-and-out, set your tone early. We are not going to allow this to happen again because this is a game that I believe can really be the determining factor for the Cowboys defense to set the tone for the rest of the season.
Well, I think to answer your question, Haley, I agree with you. I think there was the emotional element of this game, but I think for me at least, what made this game so rough for the Cowboys was you were up by 14 points.
Yeah.
Not only were you up by 14 points, you would think when the opposing team is up by 2 scores, you start passing it. They said, "Now we don't respect your run. We're going to continue to run the ball." And then when you look at the last couple of games, let's see, 206 to start this 4-game slide, 240 after that, 117, 136. It's like I said, it's going to be an area they haven't even seen some of the league's best runners. And so that is why I think there is cause for alarm here, because if you're going to go deep in the playoffs, we had talked about this week. One of the discussions I'd had with one of my Cowboys team sources was, we had talked so much about the gaudy stats from the wide receivers, which is why that wide receiver market was so wild this offseason. Teams are running the ball again.
Yeah.
It's so funny how offenses sort of change year to year. They're running the ball again, and as they face more teams that run the ball, and then you've got an offense, which we'll get into in a little bit, that's not doing you any favors, you are gassing your D. I mean, even the pass rush for the Cowboys looked a little shaky.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and set that up with a little bit of tease because Dak is not absolved from this, and neither are his wide receivers. What was happening on some of those routes that led to those 2 turnovers that led to a gassed-out defense? We'll have that and more on the other side of Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the preferred dating app of the Dallas Cowboys. But first, Jess.
Let's talk Santa at the Star. Get your holiday photo with Santa at the Star, presented by Monument Realty. Oh my goodness, hello. Santa Claus will be in his Cowboys-themed cottage in the Star District across from Ascension from November 18th through November 24th. Book your visit before December 2nd to save $5 with the code STAR5. Visit thestardistrict.com/Santa for more info. I can say I did this last year. I took my dog, the cutest Christmas picture I think I've ever sent out to my family.
Did you have it in a Cowboys jersey? Don't lie.
I didn't. I had a Cowboys ugly Christmas sweater, Jane. There's a difference. And I say ugly Christmas
Don't
sweater.
lie.
It wasn't ugly. I had a Cowboys ugly Christmas sweater. So
That's cute.
Not a jersey, but
I love it.
same
I
thing.
wish I could put my dogs in a team. I'm always looking for Shield gear because I cover the Cowboys. I can't wear any of the swag, even though I grew up here.
Toby
but finding
had
Shield
his
gear
little-
is
his little
tough.
gear.
It's very, very tough.
Your
Toby
dogs
had
are
a-
cute.
Oh,
I
so
love
cute.
seeing them on
We
Insta.
love the fur mamas over here.
We love all the dogs.
Hey.
Your dog is the best.
What's a shield? A shield. What?
NFL, the logo, they call it the Shield.
Get away from me.
Yeah, there you go.
Why didn't I know that?
Oh God, you're fine, sis.
Don't fire
Speaking
me.
of dogs, Jane, you had mentioned that the Cowboys offense needs a dog.
They do.
There you
And
go.
We've got some injury updates. They might have one of those dogs back.
I didn't know
Look
where,
at that
I didn't
segue.
know where we were going there.
It popped in my head. I was like, I have to do this.
All right, all you dog lovers out there, here's what we got. The biggest that we'll start with, Anthony Barr, trending towards returning. Mike McCarthy told us today he's in pretty good shape. He'll practice today in that walkthrough, so that's really positive. Anthony Brown is also doing well. He's still in concussion protocol, but will also participate today. Michael Gallup, I asked about Michael Gallup, and
You got an interesting response on that one,
yeah,
Haley.
it wasn't exactly what I was expecting either. It was so to the point that I was like, okay.
That's
It
exactly what I did.
wasn't a gotcha question
Yeah,
either.
it
I
wasn't.
think he's drained from the weekend.
Yeah. So Michael's feeling good, no issues. He'll be practicing. And Zeke is an interesting one. I know we talked a lot about Zeke last week. The question mark. Proud of us for being able to say what needed to be said, that Zeke might not play, and he didn't play. Kind of the same vibe today. Mike said if he's ready to play, we'll play him. So I'll be interested to hear from him more tomorrow, just to see how he's feeling, just hear from his perspective. But right now, if he's ready to play, we'll play him.
And it's always such a weak locker room when they do these, Mike is very particular about his schedule when they take these road trips, and it's kind of been a long weekend, and now they've got to travel again to Minnesota. So today was supposed to be a practice. They turned it into a walkthrough. He wants them at full speed tomorrow, which is not dissimilar from what we've seen coaches in the past when they play that Thanksgiving game and whatnot. So yeah, we'll see what they do with Ezekiel Elliott, because we talked about this last week. The run defense of the Packers was not necessarily a threat, which is why you said, okay, let's see what Malik Davis and Tony Pollard have in this one. the Vikings run D is pretty good. It's top 10, I think.
Definitely not bad.
So we'll see where they're at with Ezekiel Elliott, because we keep talking about the issue here is long game for him. But I want to talk about the Cowboys and the receivers.
Real quick, their rushing defense is 16. Cowboys
16.
is 29.
Yeah, they know.
So their total defense is 29, though, the Vikings. Cowboys' total defense is 12.
They're not.
So, I mean.
They have some. No,
There you go.
they're susceptible.
A give and a take.
They have guys that are similar to the Cowboys D line, where Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter, who like to get after the passer. Well, maybe aren't amazing at stealing the edge either.
Pass defense.
Let's do the thing.
29. They give up 262.9 yards per game passing. So.
This could be a week for CeeDee Lamb to
Redemption.
continue the
28
trends.
right defense.
All right, so we loved that we saw what started out as a miscue with CeeDee Lamb. He cross-faced in front of the safety, according to Dak Prescott. You want to explain what that means to some of our viewers?
What is like to cross
face,
I
yeah.
mean, he just has to go past that. He has to go in front of that safety. He cannot go behind that safety. When that safety is middle field, he has to go across that safety to at least draw him out of the play. And that's not what happened there.
See, come here and learn stuff, ladies. And I'm talking to guys, too. There are some guys, you'd be shocked. They don't know some of this stuff either. So we try to educate you on the show.
And it's okay not to know.
And it's
That's
okay
why
not
we're
to know.
here.
That's why we're here. But when we're talking about these things, I want to make sure that listeners understand, because when I started out, I didn't come from a family that went through X's and O's, and it's been acquired over the years. So hope you learned something there. So it was a bit of a miscue. They communicated on the sidelines, and then he went off. He had his first 100-yard game this year, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. We love to see that. Guys, I am curious your thoughts on this, and we'll get into Dalton Schultz in a minute. You know how I feel about this. So on CeeDee Lamb, I feel for him, because he is one of the most likable guys in that locker room. He truly is. And what I love about him, and even Mike McCarthy said it today, he wants to be great. And I feel that. I think it was hard when you consider that Dak did not play in the preseason at all. So he didn't get a lot of work with the receivers. And then, of course, he was injured. Do you guys think that, Mike McCarthy talked about this was route adjustment and timing. Do you think that stuff is playing into these guys not running the right routes? Or why was it working with Cooper Rush?
Well, first of all, the ball wasn't getting passed around like that when people were right
I was
here.
gonna
Number one.
Yeah.
Number two.
He wasn't slanging it like that.
They were forced to rely on the run game at that point.
What that play in particular is what happened. I think there was a miscommunication on what coverage was being played. I think that Dak saw a cover 2 situation and they dropped into this cover 3 situation, or it might have been the other way around, my bad. But yeah, and I think that it played out differently from what CD thought he saw and then what Dak saw he saw. And this is, I'm not going to say that it's it's not a mistake that is excusable, because you need to know that, but that coverage is something that's just starting to happen. Like, people disguising it in that way. Now, I will say, somebody in the press conference...
This did happen, that CeeDee Lamb
It's
one.
happened before.
It happened against the Bears.
It's happened before, and that's why it's one of those things where
That's where you get frustrated.
Exactly. But I think Michael Gelkin mentioned in the press conference, he said, like, this is, the Cowboys, 9th, 10th game, but this is Dak's 5th game. Like, it's just his 5th game. And so I think that's why you're right, Jane. I agree with you that maybe that's why you do see some of the miscommunication and stuff. But you do see also on the flip side, you see Michael Gallup starting to come along with Dak as well. So I don't know. I think they are both trying to get in a rhythm with each other, CeeDee Lamb and Dak right now.
Yeah, I think both of them even talked about that. I know Dak talked about just still trying to get into a rhythm with CD, and you really don't recognize how much of an impact it is missing as much of the season as Dak did until you actually see it unfold. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And I think that's what makes it so challenging is what Dak is capable of. You know what this offense is capable of. Perfect example of it against the Bears, right? But you also have to factor in that missed time and that they were clicking really well. To be honest, the Bears, I don't think, were as much of a threat as the Packers, given the history and all of the hoorah going into that game. So there was a little bit more at stake on Sunday.
Hoorah.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a different word. But it's hard. So you have to give Dak the benefit of the doubt. And you touched on this a little bit. My issue with CD is that it always feels like he has to play with some sort of chip on his shoulder times 2 in order to feel great. It's almost like, and that's why I'm so high on getting an Odell or somebody else in here, because I think CD's a guy that likes to be challenged. I think he likes proving to everybody that he's that guy. And not to be disrespectful to the rest of the wide receiver room, but right now I really feel like he doesn't feel like he has that guy who's going to push him to make the big catches, to have those big games. On Sunday, getting mixed up in those interceptions and, not being on the same page as your quarterback, taking some of that responsibility, I think that fueled him into having a career game. And on a consistent basis for him, I think it's challenging when you don't have that push, when you don't have that guy at practice that you're like, let's go one-on-one. Like, I'm going to do this better than you. And so I don't want to get back into the Odell conversation, but I just think having a guy like that in there would really push him.
But that's why he brings up Amari Cooper so much.
Yeah.
How many times do you guys, in your conversations with CD, does he bring up Amari Cooper? And particularly,
Often.
he's brought it up
lot.
even with OBJ. I think some of that is when you're getting some attention off of CD, he's allowing himself to make some of those plays. He struggles in the double and triple coverage.
Yes.
So I think he does need a guy Amari was a bit of Amari prided himself on it. He has his route running guru page, like he's a bit of a savant in that way. And I think he coached those guys up. And I do think that they're missing a guy like Adam Henry, who was the wide receivers coach. I don't think we talk enough about that. Look at what he did for OBJ and for Jarvis Landry when he was at LSU, and then what he did here having 3 1,000-yard receivers. And so I think all of that factors, and I think that's why even Jerry is being so bullish about OBJ and why that locker room is being so bullish about it is because I think they see having a veteran like him in there is good for everyone, even if it is a year or two. Because what you're doing is you're helping them invest in the guys they spent a lot of money in and might have to start paying money for CeeDee Lamb when his contract comes up here in the next year or two.
And if you have the option of OBJ, I've said it over and over again, it's an additive. Jerry even echoed that when he talked on The Fan this week. He said, well, it would be an additive to what we already have. But going back to talking about CeeDee, because listening to the other side and what the Vikings were saying, they want to expose CeeDee. I mean, completely. That is what I got. They want to expose him, and they're really going to pay attention to him in the slot. So I wouldn't be surprised if you do see a little bit more of Noah Brown, a little bit more of Michael Gallup this week, because they're going in there with a plan to not only attack CeeDee in that slot, but they're trying to put pressure on Dak early. Straight what they said. We want to put pressure on Dak, and specifically the pocket. They don't necessarily want to get to Dak. They want to collapse the pocket. They want Dak to feel that pressure, so he's forced to get that ball out early. Of course, we know the domino effect that comes with that, the miscommunications or the interceptions. And so they're going in there to expose Dak and CeeDee, specifically those two and that duo. So it's going to be interesting to see, maybe CeeDee doesn't have a fantastic 100-yard game like he did against Green Bay, but it does leave room for Michael Gallup. It leaves room for Noah Brown. Jalen Tolbert, maybe. Kevontae Turpin, maybe. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Cowboys offense is going to respond with their other wide receivers in the room.
Just real quick, we got the official practice report from Cowboys PR. So all the guys we talked about, Anthony Barr limited, Anthony Brown was limited, Zeke limited, Michael Gallup was full. DeMarcus Lawrence is on this list. He is not practicing today with a foot injury.
Oh, God. And
Tyler Smith had a knee injury last week. He's full go. As for the Vikings, it's so interesting seeing how short this one is in comparison to the Packers last week. Christian Darrisaw, you talked about earlier, he did not practice with a concussion. Caleb Evans, concussion. Justin Jefferson was limited today with a toe injury. Zadarius Smith, limited with a knee injury. And Dalvin Tomlinson did not practice with a calf injury.
I creeped on the Green Bay folks before I came in. It looks like they're not really worried about Zadarius like that, but the Evans gentleman is playing corner, so that might be he's the backup corner if I'm not mistaken. So if he can't go, then maybe you're on a third string corner out there. So there may be other receiving opportunities here for the Cowboys.
Well, I was going to bring up, you were talking about the interceptions for Dak. I think that's what's a little alarming, and you can't put all of them on Dak. Like I said, Dalton Schultz and CeeDee, there was definitely some miscues there, but I mean, we're talking 4 games, 4 picks, 2 in the Packers game that turned into points. Do you think that this gets in his head at all?
No.
I don't think so, because he trusts what he's seeing. And I mean, you can tell he trusts what he's seeing. And people have complained years about Dak not throwing with, urgency, with him not throwing guys open, whatever. And he's throwing with anticipation. The player just has to, is going to be there. So needs to be there. So I feel like, the aggressiveness in which he's playing is kind of, is okay to me. I do think that the passing 46 times,
that's
though,
what I was just getting ready to say.
It is very likely that you are going to see more picks or whatever the case may be, because it's almost a given with how much you're throwing the ball. So I think that also plays into the number of picks that he threw this game specifically.
I think it just goes back to what we talked about at the top of the show, just having accountability and doing your job. I know we talked about that being the thing for defense to key on this week, but that obviously translates over to offense as well. Dak is never a guy who doesn't take accountability for what he's done. He took accountability for those 2 picks. He took accountability for the mistakes that he made. Now you have to have Dalton and you have to have CD and you have to have Michael or whoever it is making those mistakes. You also have to have a candid conversation and say, look, I maybe was too aggressive in throwing into double coverage while you were both running that route that I saw you both running the route, and I did it anyways. But I need you guys to get it together, too. If one of you guys is running, some of that pressure and some of that defense is going the opposite way, right? So I like how aggressive Dak is. Mm-hmm. I would rather have a Dak Prescott who's going to take the chances, who's going to trust himself to make those decisions, than to have, let's say, a Cooper Rush who, sure, he's consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get out of him every week. But it's a lack of excitement. It's a lack of aggressiveness when you're watching him play, and you rely more on the run when a Cooper Rush is in.
Do folks not remember what his game looked like before Dak came back? I mean, he started to get exposed. We hadn't seen Cooper Rush. I mean, think about before he got the starting job while Dak was dealing with the injury, we'd only seen him in one career game. That was Minnesota.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, they brought that up on the other side. They said on the other side, they were talking about the last time we saw this team, Cooper Rush led to victory. This is a revenge game for Dak. And in my mind, just I guess being around the building, being around all of this, I'm like, Dak doesn't think that way. That is not how Dak sees this. So it's very interesting to see things from the Vikings' point of view, to even assume that is how Dak
is what they
seeing
said?
this.
Wait. It took me a long time. Wait.
That this is a revenge game for Dak against Cooper Rush to show, look, I can beat the Vikings too, which is absolutely just ridiculous to me. But that's what was said. But I did write it in my notes because I just couldn't believe that was kind of the point of view over there. But to your point, Haley, everybody is, when you see Dak throwing the ball that many times, that tells me one thing. The run game was not established. And when you lean on the run, obviously you haven't had a healthy 1-2 punch with Zeke and Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott with the injury there. But you do have a Malik Davis who has stepped up when he needed to. But to me, you can't have that 1-2 punch if he's only getting 5 touches on the ball. I mean, that's an issue. So you wonder why Dak threw the ball so many times. You wonder why he had 2 interceptions. Well, when you have 2 running backs, one of them is only getting 5 touches in a game, that's a very good indicator to why. And that goes back to, again, Kellen Moore maybe need to taking more accountability for that play calling within that game.
I think the reason why they're talking about Kirk Cousins and Dak is because there were so many comparisons about Dak Prescott being in the same categories as Kirk, and then I think it was easy to make those comparisons as they both bet on themselves to get their big deals. Kirk Cousins is just so fascinating. He has the best win-loss record of his career, but he's having his worst season since becoming the full-time starter. So I think that's interesting.
It's the chains, girl. It's those chains he's wearing every week. It's weighing him down.
They asked him today during the press conference why he doesn't wear the wristband with the plays on it anymore, and overall it just seems like he's more comfortable with the scheme. He's more comfortable with the play calling. And it seems like it's just a little more simplified for him to not have also an interesting
also just
point
throw
of
the
view.
ball to Justin Jefferson.
Well, and that's what
there you go.
That's what I was gonna say is like he's Kirk has always been a little bit of a gambler, but now with these receivers, like especially with like the addition to Hawkinson, he just be like, catch this thing.
Let's talk about this. I had actually forgot about this, and this was in my notes that I wanted to bring up. I always love playing this. If this had happened, what if? So the Cowboys were right there at 17. Guess where Justin Jefferson was in the 2020 draft?
Five picks after CeeDee Lamb.
22 overall picks. So the Cowboys picked CeeDee Lamb. Let's talk about their numbers. since the Cowboys pick. Lamb, 206 receptions. Jefferson, 265. Receiving yards, Jefferson's almost doubled it. 2,743 for Lamb, 4,076 for Jefferson. Receiving touchdowns, Lamb's got 16, Jefferson 21. This is where it's really interesting. 100-yard games, Lamb only has 6, Jefferson has 20. Yeah. What's fascinating is I covered Jefferson's pro day, and I remember his wide receivers coach, who's worked with a bunch of these guys in the offseason, he pulled me aside and he goes, Justin Jefferson's going to be better than Jamar Chase in the league. And I was like, huh? Come on, man. Come on. He said, watch. He is going to be better than Jamar Chase in the league. And he is certainly making a case for that right now. Most receiving yards in your first 3 seasons in NFL history. You want to guess who he's in the company of right now? This will be a fun game.
I'm not going to try. I'm not even going to do it.
He is in the same vein now as Randy Moss, who had 4,163 in his first 3 seasons. OBJ, who had 4,122. You got Justin Jefferson with 4,076 and A.J. Green with 3,883. And keep in mind, Jefferson has 8 more games to go this season. So just some fascinating numbers about how much of a threat he is. Now, keep in mind, the last time the Cowboys played him, they did have a plan. He only had 2 catches for 21 yards. I don't know if that's going to be the case this time, but we'll see.
It's he's averaging like 95 yards a game right now, but a lot of like his numbers being insane like that are necessity.
That's what I was going to say.
Like,
I mean, it's hard.
It's difficult to it's very difficult to compare a lot of these receivers just given their situations. Like, I mean, but he in particular, he's getting so many opportunities and he just takes advantage of them. And he's one of those guys like, you got to go get a play. He's going to go make the play. That matchup between him and Trayvon is going to be, because I think they both have gotten better. They both have taken a step from last year.
To say.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good, girl.
Taking all your
right
points.
here. You are.
I know. I'm like, you brought up Trayvon. I was like, check.
So why don't we
mind.
hold that conversation for the other side of the break? Because let's just talk about matchups we're looking forward to. And then, of course, we're going to dig into this a little bit more tomorrow. One of my favorites, Tatum Everett, is the team reporter for Minnesota. She's going to join us and give us a little bit more insight, specifically TJ Hawkinson, who learned the playbook in like 4 days when he was there. But let's talk about Diggs versus Jefferson and why that one's going to be one to watch on the other side of the break. This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
With Smoothie King's original Angel Food and new Angel Food Slim without added sugar, you no longer have to choose between treating yourself and hitting your goals this summer. You don't have to choose between great taste and feeling great. Because at Smoothie King, every blend is made with whole fruits and no syrups, so you can satisfy your cravings without compromise. The only choice you will need to make is which one is best for you. Try our classic Angel Food or the new Angel Food Slim, blended without added sugar. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. But first, Jess.
'Tis the season. Experience the magic of the Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters during Christmas time. With your ticket, you'll enjoy a 45-minute guided tour, Christmas cookies, and a takeaway limited edition Dallas Cowboys ornament. Select dates are now available and will sell out very fast, so make sure to book now at thestarinfrisco.com/tours.
All right, ahead of the break, we talked about the matchup we're looking forward to watching because Justin Jefferson is just... Michael Irvin said it on 105.3 The Fan today. He was asked, was that the best catch you've seen in the league.
Yes.
And what he did against the Bills last week, a comeback win on the road, was just absolutely nasty. It was like a 4th and 19, 4th and 18. It was crazy.
The entire game. It was the last half of it was playing right here, and I told Haley, like, look at that, look at it again, and it's absolutely captivating.
I mean, we're talking like highlight reels for the ages.
That was football at its best. Watching that game.
So, but we talked about this the last time the Cowboys played him, which again is so funny because we were talking about this earlier. Cooper Rush versus Dak, how well the defense seemingly plays when Cooper Rush is the quarterback. And maybe we'll deep dive into that a little bit more tomorrow because we don't have time. We will, because I think it is an interesting conversation. When they played him last year, he only had 2 catches for 21 yards. They didn't target Diggs against the Packers last week. And then when you look back to the game last year, he was never targeted when he was in primary coverage. Is Kirk daring to go after Diggs this week or no?
I want him to, yeah. I hope so. I sure hope so, because the thing about Justin Jefferson is he makes plays when the ball is in the air. That, to me, is just the perfect time for Trayvon to come back up and say, you want to talk about my defense? You want to say that we are overexposed and we're not capable of making plays happen? This is the opponent to do it with. Justin Jefferson is absolutely the statement player that Trayvon Diggs needs to get that ball from, and I expect him to fully be the ball hawk that we know he can be against him.
I think that's a lot of respect there, because even with Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers not going at you, it says something about you. Like, it really does, because he's one of the guys, probably some of the best ball placement in the game. And if he's like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't go over there, I could definitely see Kirk being like, But with the emergence of Justin Jefferson and how involved he is in this offense, they move him around also. So the other corners are going to have to be prepared for having to cover him. So it's not... I'll be curious to see if Dan Quinn goes out on a limb and says, like, hey, no, you shadow him or you follow him, but that's not typically his MO. But maybe this game, if you take him out of this game, that it changes how they play offense. Maybe that is a matchup we should be looking at to, neutralize things.
I think with Trayvon as well, you have to respect his growth. I know you touched on that a little bit, and it's obvious when you think of Trayvon Diggs, you think of interceptions, and that's a proper thing to think about. But Trayvon has really elevated his game this season. According to the Cowboys PR staff, through 9 games, Diggs only has 2 missed tackles, and 6.3% missed tackle rate is 9th among cornerbacks. And I just think when you talk about Trayvon Diggs, you have to start talking about him in a different light. I think he's really elevated who he is as a player. The interceptions are cool, and I love that he gets those. I love that we have that option of someone who's going to go up and get the ball, to your point, Jess. But what I'm really interested in is what else he can do, because we expect him to get the interceptions, but I don't think people really expected him to be the tackler that he is. And I think he showed that really early in that Bengals game. It stands out to me in the Giants game. I think he had back-to-back games where he made the game-saving tackles. And so I'm just really interested to see not necessarily the aerial battle between him and Justin Jefferson, but what Trayvon can limit if Jefferson is able to get catches and keeping him down.
Do you guys think at all the respect level there is, because keep in mind Stephon Diggs was obviously in Minnesota. They knew what little bro was capable of when he was in Alabama. I mean, he was a wide receiver that switched to cornerback. So in other words, I mean, he was around the facility. Those two are so close. They know his game. Because they know his game, do you think it extends more than just what he's been able to accomplish in the NFL? It's sort of having that back history of, we knew what we were getting from Stephon Diggs. We saw what he was doing in college. This is a guy we don't want no smoke from.
Yeah, I mean, they're brothers, and they're very open about how much they compete against each other and have competed against each other. So, and Stephon speaks very highly of his brother, but if he don't look good, he'll say it too. So,
yeah, I mean, obviously Stephon is now with the Bills, but my point in saying is, like, a lot of these, there's not a ton of turnover from when he was playing and then came here. And so I just wonder if some of that goes to, we sort of know what we're getting with Trayvon based on what we knew what we had with Stephon.
Well, and I love to RJ Ochoa, shout out to RJ. He did an interview with Trayvon earlier this week on Blogging the Boys, and he asked, how are you more quiet compared to your brother? And just the contrast there of Trayvon said, I don't like to be mouthy. I do my thing, I do my job, and I let them talk to me, and I just show them what's up. I mean, it was a very good interview, and it was really cool to hear him talk about that contrast, because I just never thought of it that way, of how really different they are being so close. And I guess me and my brother, I mean, we're really the same way. We're complete opposites, but then you see just how different Stephon and Trayvon are, and it is insane. Didn't think about it until I saw that interview.
George Edwards, right? Former Vikings.
Yep.
Maybe he has some insight on how
He clearly did last year.
Yes, I think the Cowboys played the run last year against Dalvin Cook extremely well. They use Ham, the fullback, a lot, and that he can get downhill on you. So I just wanted to, for familiarity, I think George Edwards being in that room is going to help too.
Well, let's touch on that a little bit more tomorrow. We'll put that in our notes. And I do, like I said, want to get into how this defense plays without Cooper Rush, because respect to John Machota for even asking the question. CBS Sports actually put out the tweet with some interesting numbers that I hadn't really thought about. Mike wasn't necessarily taking the bait, but why we think Cooper Rush was able to make this defense look a little bit more efficient. We'll get into that tomorrow. Before we wrap up, got a pass interference for us.
I do, and I'm so glad you ended on that note, because let's talk about the last time the Cowboys and the Vikings played. It is time for past interference. They played in 2021. They obviously won. The Cowboys won 20-16. Now, going back through the history of the Cowboys and the Vikings, they've played a total of 26 times within the span of the NFL, 14 of which the Cowboys have won. Within that time, the Cowboys have scored a total of 73 touchdowns and on average score about 2.8 touchdowns a game. So the more you know.
And to this day, the rivalry from the Vikings fans still exists because it's all how Dallas got Troy Aikman in their Super Bowls. It's always fun. If you've not been to Minnesota before, one of my favorite stadiums, an incredible atmosphere. I unfortunately am not making the trip this weekend because we have a reporter in that region, so I'm sort of bummed out about it. But we're going to talk a little bit more about this matchup tomorrow. Like I said, we love getting opposing team reporters, and here Tatum Everett is one of the best, and then we'll deep dive into some of those topics that we decide to earmark for tomorrow. For all of us on Girls Talk, Boys Talk, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!